case was the case of Leith Peter Von Stein in Washington, North Carolina in 1988. So first we're going to start off with a description of the crime. Who, what, when, where, and why. So July 25th, 1988. This occurred in the Smallwood subdivision of Washington, North Carolina, where American businessman Leith Peter Von Stein and his wife Bonnie were attacked in their homes. Leith was bludgeoned and stabbed to death, but Bonnie survived with serious injuries. She managed to call for help. Von Stein's stepson, Chris Pritchard, and his two friends, Gerald Neil Henderson and James Bartlett Upchurch III, were arrested and tried for the murder. Upchurch was convicted of first-degree murder, and Pritchard and Henderson were convicted of aiding and abetting. So relevant info for this is that Pritchard's motivation was revealed to be his desire to inherit his father's $2 million estate. He was the mastermind behind the murder, while Henderson was the getaway driver, and Upchurch was the guy who actually killed and attacked Leith and his wife.
And here's the background information. The victims were Leith and Bonnie. Leith is the stepfather of Chris, and Bonnie is the biological mother of Chris. And the three suspects are Chris, Gerald, and James. Gerald and James are friends of Chris in college. And the two investigators were John Crone and John Taylor. John Crone is the newly appointed leader of the police department, and John Taylor is the youngest detective in the police department.
Now for the evidence. 4 pieces of evidence around the crime scene include burnt clothing, a broken window, a burnt map, and a discarded knife found in the woods. The clothing could be identified using a burn test. The window shards could be collected through vacuuming and later be analyzed for fingerprints. Blood analysis on the knife could yield if it was a murder weapon. Handwriting analysis could be done on the burnt map to narrow down suspects. If we were crime scene investigators, one additional piece of evidence we'd look for would be a rug near the crime scene, which could possibly entrap a hair follicle and yield evidence on who was present during the crime.
So the next slide is eyewitnesses' testimonies. So in this case, there was an eyewitness. The eyewitness was a hog farmer who spotted a fire around the time of the murders. This assisted investigation by providing the location of where key evidence was found, including a hunting knife, some clothing, and a map of Von Stein's neighborhood. This is the most crucial evidence, and without this eyewitness, this evidence would most likely not be found.
In summary, the trial was January of 1990. Christopher and Gerald accepted the plea deal, while Upchurch denied all charges. The jury later found Upchurch guilty for first-degree murder. The key evidence was the burned map, which through handwriting analysis connected Chris to the crime scene, sentencing him to life in prison. Gerald was sentenced for 40 years, and Upchurch was sentenced for life. Currently, Chris and Gerald are serving parole, and Upchurch is in prison. In our opinion, we don't believe the case was solved in an effective manner because it took detectives 6 months to start piecing together the evidence. We attribute most of the lengthening and complexity to a slow police department.
But then in 1974, along came a new game. A game called Dungeons & Dragons, also known as D&D. It was a game that changed everything. D&D introduced to the planet rules for fantasy role-playing. And I want to remind you, this is a time long, long ago, before video games like Minecraft or World of Warcraft, before cell phones, before the internet, before Star Wars, before twerking,